I really would like to share how grateful I am, guys, that you are organizing this. Um, it's like, for me, it's like a change in the school. You step up for your leadership. You are proactive. You are active. You take initiative. You take risks, and that shows how mature you are. And that gives me hope to a transition in the school, hope for moving towards another realm. I think we all need that. So in this whole time of transition period, you really taking a lead. So thank you. And I'm also grateful for the challenge you gave me, because you were saying, okay, Anna, can you give a lecture? As if I have them piled up in the closet, which is not the case at all. So I said, do you realize I worked on my community lecture that I did again a while ago, 3 months? So it's not something that I easily shake out of my something. I always make a lot of work and study out of it. So, but this was a really nice challenge, because I felt so drawn to this topic and this transition period that I thought I'm going to do something with it. And then last but not least, I start to feel grateful for this pandemic period, because it gives me more time to contemplate, more time to reflect, more time to study. And I became active in bringing out what I kept inside for a long time. So I have given already a lecture on negative intention, on treatment plan, on communities. And today I like to talk about the world in transition, core in transition. Okay, I would like to start with a poem of Rainer Maria Rilke. I would prefer to read in German, but not everybody speaks German. So I choose to read it in English. It's a poem that's 100 years old. It's, for me, Rilke is a very inspirational thinker, because he's non-dual. So for us, he wrote texts and poems that are very inspirational. And this poem is about patience. And patience, for me, is a virtue for every human being, but especially for core energetic therapists. I beg you to have patience with everything unresolved in your heart, and to try to love the questions themselves, as if they were locked rooms or books written in a very foreign language. Don't search for the answers, which could not be given to you now, because you would not be able to live them. And the point is to live everything. Live the questions now. Perhaps then, someday far in the future, you will gradually, without even noticing it, live your way into the answer. In this lecture, I will shine some light on our current situation and try to find some answers in our approach. In the end, it turned out I have more questions than answers. I want to look where we need to work with the individual consciousness, or when it's more appropriate to look at the collective consciousness. These reflections could be a contribution to the Mexico Convention 2022, because that will be the topic. The world, Mother Earth, our globe, cries for help. and is moving through a disaster of the human species. And there is more crisis to come. If you think we could move back to normal after this pandemic period, or is less threatening when the majority will be vaccinated, I presume this is wishful thinking. I guess this will not be the case. Back to normal will not exist anymore. We are all moving through a transition and we all need a different attitude. What does it ask from us? Reflection and contemplation, and the willingness to change and to contribute. In lecture 183, The Spiritual Meaning of Crisis, we can read the following, and I'm going to read a quote from that. What is the real spiritual meaning of crisis? Crisis is an attempt of nature to effect change through the cosmic lawfulness of the universe. If change is obstructed by the ego, the part of the consciousness that directs the will, crisis will occur to make structural change possible. Without such structural change in the entity, no balance can be attained. Every crisis ultimately means such a readjustment, whether it appears in the form of pain, difficulties, upheaval, uncertainty, or merely the insecurity that comes from starting out on unaccustomed ways of living after giving up a familiar one. Crisis in any form attempts to break down old structures based on false conclusions and therefore our negativity. Crisis shakes loose ingrained frozen habits so that new growth becomes possible. It tears down and breaks up, which is momentarily painful, but transformation is unthinkable without it. The more painful a crisis is, the more the will-directing part of consciousness must attempt. So I want to ask you to reflect for a moment after I read this quote from lecture 183. What was the major crisis in your life so far? What was the negative will current and what was it obstructing? And maybe you know what the outcome was, the newborn you. So just close your eyes for a moment and think about it. Maybe you also want to write down some things. It's up to you. I want you to open your eyes again so we can continue. While change is part of life itself, nothing stands still and you cannot hold on to anything. A beautiful or tender moment, a beautiful sunset, a feeling. Everything in us, around us, stops or passes. And the more you can be in the moment and enjoy, the more you can accept that it will pass. Where there is life, there will be change. The more you live in fear, or the more your system is occupied by negativity, the more you resist that changeability of life. The question is how much no there is in your system that makes you resistant to change. If you can take life more as it is and thus focus on surrender to the yes flow, the more you can surrender to change. This is continuing flow of the no, which contains fear and anger, towards the yes, the flow of trust and hope. Then you are more one with the universal movement of contraction and expansion, a cosmic principle to which all life on our planet is subject. If you can, there is growth, and that leads to more satisfaction and fulfillment. That is why it is so important to work with your negativity, to transform your misconceptions, destructive emotions, attitudes, and behavioral patterns, to be able to surrender to life itself, to move from your no flow to your yes flow. If you try to hold on too much or resist change, the more blocks you will throw up, the more you will move towards a crisis. This is not only on an individual level, but also on a collective level. How many signals have we received from our planet that the movement we are making collectively is leading towards a catastrophe? Many different signals. Global warming, sea level rise, the hole in the ozone layer, too much nitrogen in the atmosphere, insects and bees necessary for our food chain are disappearing, forest fires, large fluctuations in temperature, great drought interspersed with heavy rain showers. We cut down jungles and primeval forests and go deeper into an environment of animals that carry viruses that we humans are not resistant to. Read Jared Diamond. The book is called Guns, Germs, and Steel. And the book is published in 2000 that predicted these situations. What is the response of planet Earth to us? Is that if you don't listen, I'll make you feel? Or is it a cry for help, cooperation and movement in a different direction? I believe the latter. And what can we do? What can you contribute as an individual? And what can we do as a group? This is not a simple question. And again, I want to suggest that we contemplate on this for a moment, because core energetics is an evolutionary process. It provides instruments we can use for ourselves and for others, like clients, family, friends, neighbors, and your local community. What do you do and how do you do it? Ask yourself that question for a moment. and realize every small contribution you do helps. Okay, let's continue. I want to talk a little bit about grounding. Our start to any work, a session, individually, couples, or a group, begins with grounding. In many cases, grounding turns out not only to be the beginning, but also the final goal. Why is that? Grounding is not so much the work with your legs and feet around the earth. It is mainly about bringing someone into reality. Not only the work of the legs and feet is important for this, but also the hands and the face, the extremities of our body that are connected to the outside world. Seeing, hearing, and smelling are an important part of this, but also how you manifest yourself in life. Can you give yourself structure and thus direction? Can you focus on what you have to do and what you really want in life? You badly need your sense of reality to be able to discern what is truth in these days and these times where social media disseminates information that we cannot trace or trace back to. What do you do with this? What is your point of view? Can you stay with yourself and your own truth? Or do you let yourself be carried away by all kinds of conspiracy theories or inundated by the flood of news that comes over us every day? Can you select what to take and what not? Can you keep the number of stimuli that is continuously coming over you reduce more so that you do not become dull? Can you protect your sensitivity and keep the body that's your instrument clean for the work that we do with other humans? Can you perceive your own frequency so that an attunement to the frequency of others can be heard or felt? These elements of grounding apply not only to the individual, but also to the collective. For us as a core community, what do we do with the given circumstances of the moment? Do we as a group let ourselves be carried away by restrictions and limitations? Or do we resist and leak this way the energy by bumping into a wall? How can we stick to our truth and our dedication and not let ourselves be carried away? There's no easy answer to this, but asking the question over and over is already fruitful. It's not an either or situation. It's an and. Don't be tempted by this simple polarity thinking. It is part of our job to connect those polarities. Not think exclusively, but inclusive. To connect the polarities and to recognize that all these seemingly split off parts in our lives, there's no victim without a perpetrator, and they both live in us. And again, I want to ask you to reflect for a moment. What is it that you don't want to know about yourself? And I like to give some examples here. For example, If you feel easily criticized, then probably you criticize yourself, and then you don't look at your own criticism. Or another example is, if you are seeing unsafety around you all the time, you're probably very unsafe yourself. Can you connect with this? Or something we all probably do is, are you helping maybe the others all the time and stepping over your own helplessness with this? And the same with care. If you take a lot of care of other people, is there actually a need for care inside of yourself? So ask yourself, what is it that I don't want to know about myself? And I pause for a moment. And maybe what you encounter now, it would be very fruitful to share that later with your friend or partner, or to bring it to your next session. I would like to continue, so come back into the room. I want to talk about breathing. Why should I say anything about breathing in this talk? Breath is life, and a full breath is surrender to life. Our breathing follows the cosmic principle of expansion and contraction. It is as it were a moving movement such as ebb and flow, which encompasses all life on this planet. As you work on opening your energy blocks by working out the underlying emotional trauma, the freer you will be in your body, more freedom to move, to breathe, and to express yourself. Breathing is an unconscious process associated with the involuntary movement. It is therefore a process that you cannot direct and control. We work with the chest and the muscles in this area to make more room to breathe. We mainly work with the exhalation and extending it to increase the inhalation. In lengthening the exhalation, people encounter their deepest fears, namely fear of death, when they are led through this practice. Dare to enter that ultimate emptiness, to feel the confidence that the body will continue to live and breathe again. To also develop more oxygen capacity in this way, so that you feel more vital and gain more self-confidence. The breath connects us to the life around us. As I said, it follows a cosmic principle. Many religions pray, move, and sing together. In all these practices, breathing together in a cadence plays an important role. In this way, we create a mutual cohesion and a different state of consciousness. We are lifted above ourselves and experience a different state of being in connection. Most of us look for that experience because it's so nice. So my suggestion here is let's breathe together for a moment and hear each other. So Bauke will stop the recording. Unmute yourself. How do I get back myself? I don't see myself in the screen. Yeah. So we will do this again at the end, I promise you, because I want us to sing at the end so we can hear each other. So I want to move on and I want to talk a little bit about expansion and contraction. All human life and development are subject to this movement. We see this reflected in nature, the merging, flowering, sinking, and tranquility. This cycle moves on and on every year again. You can also see the expansion and contraction strongly reflected in the economy. Scarcity increases demand and price. We see an upward and a downward movement. One cannot exist without the other. They are inseparable. Let's have a closer look at this ongoing movement of life. In its pure form, expansion is creativity, growth, construction, a forward movement, energy that wants to come out. It is healthy growth and outward looking. You put your ego aside and you look for the other. In the distortion, it leads to superficiality and neglect of a spiritual nature. In its pure form, contraction is introspection, caution, and patience. It leads to the search of the self. In the distortion, this leads to self-centeredness. There's always a point of rest between these two movements. Rest in the pure form is preservation, timeless, and in a state of being. It is the energy that is collected again for a new impulse. The distortion here is that it leads to stagnation, which means no growth and no process, and no progress, sorry. Expansion is pleasure. It is the positive, basic attitude towards yourself and life. It results in an affirmative attitude towards the other. Contraction is associated with pain and is a negative attitude towards yourself and life. It creates self-hatred and distrust. In this state, one cannot receive the abundance of life and the universe. This apparent contradiction, expansion and contraction, are not a contradiction, but a universal movement that is always there and interconnected. This is best expressed in our breathing. Breathing out is extension and thus expansion. It is relaxation and surrendering to life. Breathing in is restriction and therefore contraction. It is an effort. In between, there's a point of rest. It's peace, a healthy holding that keeps us connected to the rhythm. Transformation. Now I come to the point of transformation. What is transformation and what does a transformation process include? It is a profound change without being a change. So again, it's a profound change without being a change. It's like the butterfly that transforms from its cocoon. The butterfly is already there, but you don't see it. What you are heading for in a transformation process is your innermost self, your core. It has always been there and will always be there. Leaving that core is the price we pay by adapting. Adaptation to our educators, parents, school, and environment. An adjustment to get the compensation for our basic needs that we cannot do without. It is developed in our young life, being desired and welcome, having attention, love, and nourishment, having your own identity and expressing it. That expressing your feelings and weakness is allowed, and finally, that you are received in your sexual identity. We deform ourselves or give up essential things in order to survive or to be provided with some of these basic needs. We create assumptions based on these distortions that guide our lives, moving us further and further away from ourselves and our pure core. The process of going back and forth through working and letting go of these old beliefs is a long way. It is work that we all know well, the work of energy and consciousness. The energy that manifests itself in our body and creates blockages as protection, so that we no longer have to feel the pain that we also hold in our body. A transformation process takes us through the pain, and it takes courage and persistence. To be ready again and again to descend deeper, to say yes to the cramps we are trapped in over and over again. To be ready again and also to recognize the inner no, to see that place in ourselves where we sabotage ourselves and work against our fulfillment. All these processes require working with our energy and expanding your consciousness. This is a process that requires your dedication, but which you can never do alone. You need others to see their approach and view on your blind spot that we all have. This transformation process never stops and continues for a lifetime. It does not matter how many years you have been working for and how long you have been doing this work. A therapist, no matter how experienced, needs therapy and supervision. You are never done with this work. When you are dedicated to this evolutionary process, it asks to be committed to the transformation. If you don't commit, it will take you away from your original desire, rediscovering your true self and connecting with others and the world from that pure core. That transformation process and the path you take in life is beautifully portrayed in the painting La Divina Commedia by Dante Alighieri. At the bottom of the mountain, the pathway with its curves is still a big one, and you have no idea of what is there and what is yet to come. As you progress and get older, the turns it takes around the mountain get smaller as you get closer to the top. You see more, you have a better overview, light and dark alternate more quickly. This also means that the pain is less, shorter, and the joy is also more quickly present. If we look at the transformation at the collective level, a similar process is taking place. When consciousness is open, and in accordance with divine law and truth. Then we move organically and harmoniously. When consciousness contradicts it, everything turns against us. This process and movement encompass all of creation. This applies that to the individual as well to the entire planet. The earth is also an entity, and they are the same laws, and they're having the same laws of growth. Phases and stages of unfoldment apply to as well as to the individual. You see these distortions all over the world. It is an expression of divided consciousness, where people separate themselves from others, isolate themselves. All equal right movements and groups need to stand up and are isolated by the dominant norm: women, gay people, black people. Then, very often, from the dominant norm, you see selfishness, greed, ruthlessness, indifference, and cruelty that makes us turn against each other. The world has so far evolved in a dual direction in which we only true about the situation around us, about each other and about ourselves. We have to bridge this awareness of good and evil as exclusive polarities, both individually and collectively. There is good and evil within and outside ourselves. We also project the way we experience ourselves onto the world around us. This dualistic view of reality is still deeply anchored in our consciousness. This perception makes everything you experience a matter of choice between you and the other. This leads to conflicts over and over again. So I want to ask to reflect for a moment again. So close your eyes, and do you feel a full commitment in yourself to do this work and to continue? Maybe you can keep your eyes closed when I read you a quote from lecture 227. And the lecture is called Change from Outer to Inner Laws in the New Age. And here we can read the following. The planet Earth has come to a stage of development in which the old structure can no longer be maintained. It cannot bear the tensions and restrictions of the old limited consciousness. A new vision must be gained in which the self and others are perceived as one. You have to look for this new vision beneath the limited vision to which the immediate consciousness is so accustomed. This new vision brings enormous peace, security, joy, and self-expression. It is not an illusory image or wishful thinking. It is stark reality. And again, I have a question for you. Are you prepared for this new stage of consciousness? Are you one of the pioneers? I hope on this last question you can all say yes. Yes, that you are willing to be prepared for a new state of consciousness. And yes, that you are one of these pioneers. I want to read another quote of the same lecture. The God consciousness that existed in previous ages was always projected outward, as you well know. Then, as a necessary preparation, the pendulum had to swing to emphasis on the self. The individual had to give up God outside to assume full responsibility for the self. But to make the transition from the God outside to God inside and bridge that gap in time and space, a transitory period of atheism or agnosticism had to come to prepare the individual for full autonomy and selfhood. This had to happen first only on the outer levels. For full autonomy and selfhood on all levels can exist only when God within is liberated and when your oneness with God has been found. That is reality. Is there a conclusion to draw from all I have named? I don't know. What I do know is I need you. We need each other. We need to be and stand next to each other and stay connected. In this way, we will support ourselves and the other and nourish our beautiful community. When I told you how connected we are when we breathe, pray, or sing together, I had the impulse to sing together. So I want to suggest this at the end. I would love us to sing the mantra Ide Were Were. It's a song from the Yoruba people of Nigeria, dedicated to Ochun, the goddess of love. It speaks of a necklace as a symbol of initiation into love. So I will project the words on the screen and I will start the music.